date is November 1872 in the North Atlantic Ocean. On the surface of one of the most treacherous bodies of water on Earth, the ship drifts. Her sails are set, her hull is intact, her cargo is untouched. 1,700 barrels of commercial alcohol. It's worth a small fortune. The ship's logbook sits open on the captain's desk. The last entry is dated 10 days prior, and every single person on board is gone. No bodies, no distress signals, no signs of struggle, and especially no explanation. The Mary Celeste, one of the finest brigantines ever built, had become a ghost, and 150 years later, nobody has ever fully explained what happened to the 10 souls who were aboard her. This is the story of the most famous maritime mystery in history, and the closer you look at it, the stranger it gets. To understand what made the Mary Celeste so remarkable and so unsettling, you first need to understand what she was. She was built in 1860 in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia. Originally named the Amazon, she was a half-brig, which was a type of two-masted sailing vessel designed for cargo transport across open routes. From the very beginning, the ship seemed to attract misfortune. Her first captain died just days after taking command. On her maiden voyage, she collided with another vessel and had to be towed back to a port for repairs. She ran aground twice in her first decade. She changed hands multiple times as owners tried and failed to turn a profit. By 1868, she had run aground so severely off the coast of Cape Breton that she was essentially written off, sold at salvage auction for less than $2,000, a fraction of what she was worth. She was refitted, repaired, and re-registered in New York under a new name, the Mary Celeste. Some sailors would later say that the ship was cursed from the start, that a string of disasters was a warning nobody took seriously enough. But in the autumn of 1872, her new owner, a businessman named James Winchester, wasn't thinking about curses, he was thinking about profit. On the 5th of November 1872, the Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor bound for Genoa, Italy. Her cargo, 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, which was a raw ingredient for fortifying wine. It was valuable, but not particularly dangerous if handled correctly. It is estimated that alcohol was worth $35,000 at the time, which modern day would be worth nearly $900,000. Her captain was Benjamin Spooner Briggs, a 37-year-old Massachusetts native with an impeccable reputation, experienced, deeply religious, well liked by everyone who sailed with him. Briggs had done this run dozens of times. He was so confident in the voyage that he brought his wife Sarah along for the journey, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. The crew he assembled were experienced sailors, 7 men in total, Danish, German, American, all with solid records, no troublemakers, and no one with a reason to cause problems. By all accounts, when the Mary Celeste left New York, everything was exactly as it should be. The last confirmed contact with the ship was a letter Briggs wrote to his own mother. It was from New York Harbor the day before departure. Cheerful, optimistic, he was looking forward to the voyage. He would never write another letter again. December 4th, 1872, 1 month after the Mary Celeste set sail, the Di Gratia, a Canadian brigantine captained by David Morehouse, who happened to be a personal friend of Captain Briggs, was sailing roughly 400 miles east of the Azores when the crew spotted something unusual, a ship moving erratically, sails partially set, and no one at the helm. Oliver DeVoe, the Di Gratia's first mate, led a small boarding party across in a lifeboat. What they found has never been satisfactorily explained. The ship was in generally sound condition, no catastrophic damage, no fire, no signs of violence or struggle, but the Mary Celeste was completely deserted. The ship's single lifeboat was missing, not destroyed, just gone. The cargo was largely intact, with only 9 barrels found to be leaking. The ship's navigational equipment was missing, the sextant and the marine chronometer, suggesting the crew had taken them deliberately. In the captain's cabin, a half-eaten breakfast sat on the table, a child's toys were scattered on the floor, and a vial of sewing machine oil sat open on Sarah Briggs' sewing table, as if she'd stepped away just for a moment and never came back. The ship's logbook was found. The last entry was dated November 24th, which was 10 days before the Di Gratia discovered her. The location recorded in the final entry was about 400 miles from where the ship was actually found. which meant the Mary Celeste had been drifting, unmanned and alone, for more than a week. DeVoe sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar himself, a dangerous journey with a ghost crew. He filed his report with the British Admiralty Court, and that's when things got even more complicated. The Gibraltar inquiry was presided over by a man named Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General for Gibraltar, and from the moment he looked at the evidence, he was convinced of one thing: this was a crime. Flood wasn't buying the idea that a crew of experienced sailors simply vanished without any explanation. He suspected foul play, specifically that the crew of the Di Gratia had something to do with it. His reasoning? Morehouse and Briggs were friends. The Di Gratia had left New York just 8 days after the Mary Celeste. The salvage reward for bringing in the ship would be substantial. Was it possible that the two captains had arranged some kind of scheme? Well, this theory fell apart under scrutiny. There was no evidence of conspiracy. Morehouse's timeline didn't support it, and the Di Gratia crew had received only a fraction of the salvage they were legally entitled to, hardly the windfall of a carefully planned scheme. But Flood also pointed to something more disturbing. His investigators found what appeared to be a sword, with traces of blood on it, discovered in the captain's cabin, and reddish-brown stains on the deck and railing that he believed were also blood. Forensic testing at the time was rudimentary, but the initial analysis suggested that stains could be blood. Flood was more convinced than ever. Something violent had happened aboard the Mary Celeste. Later analysis told a different story. The bloodstains were re-examined in the 1880s and determined not to be blood at all, likely rust or wine residue. The sword markings were similarly inconclusive. The inquiry was concluded without a definitive answer. No charges were laid. The mystery was officially unsolved, and the theories began. In the 150 years since the Mary Celeste was found drifting in the Atlantic, dozens of theories have emerged to explain what happened. Some are grounded in evidence, some are pure speculation, and a few are genuinely difficult to dismiss. Theory 1. Cargo explosion or vapor panic. This is currently the most widely accepted explanation among maritime historians. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. Alcohol vapor is extremely volatile. During the voyage, the ship passed through a period of rough weather, and it's possible that some of the barrels, 9 were found leaking, had released enough vapor to cause a non-destructive explosion, or the fear of one. Captain Briggs, an experienced but cautious man, may have ordered the crew to abandon ship temporarily, taking the lifeboat and attaching it to the ship by a long rope, intending to wait out what he feared was an imminent catastrophic explosion. The problem: if the rope snapped, which it easily could in heavy seas, the lifeboat would have drifted away, with no way back to the ship. The 10 people aboard that lifeboat would have been at the mercy of the open ocean in November. The bodies were never found, but in the North Atlantic wintertime, that's not very surprising. Theory 2. Waterspout or seismic event. Some researchers have proposed that a sudden waterspout or underwater seismic event caused the crew to panic and abandon ship, fearing the vessel was sinking, only for the Mary Celeste to right herself and sail on without him. This could explain why the cargo is largely untouched and why there is no structural damage to the hull. However, it doesn't explain the missing navigational equipment quite as neatly. Theory 3. Mutiny. A darker possibility: the crew mutinied and killed the captain and his family, then fled. The absence of bodies will be explained if they were thrown overboard. The problem with this theory is that it requires us to believe that 7 sailors with solid records and on a well-provisioned and normally operating ship decided to commit mass murder with no clear motive. There's no evidence of conflict, no missing valuables, and no obvious gain. Most historians consider mutiny unlikely, but it can't be completely ruled out. Theory 4. Pirates. Piracy was still a genuine threat in some Atlantic shipping lanes in the 1870s. Could the Mary Celeste have been boarded and her crew taken or killed? The issue is pirates always took the cargo. The alcohol cargo was worth a significant amount. It was left almost entirely intact. A pirate attack that left the cargo untouched makes very little sense. Theory 5. The ones we don't talk about. Over the decades, the Mary Celeste has attracted some more creative explanations. Giant squid attack, time vortex, alien abduction, and, of course, the Bermuda Triangle. Never mind that the ship was found nearly 1,000 miles away from what anyone calls the Triangle. These theories say more about our need to fill in the blank with something extraordinary than they do about the actual evidence. The truth, most likely, is more routine, and somehow more tragic for it. The Mary Celeste herself survived for another 12 years after her crew vanished. She changed hands again and again. Nobody particularly wanted to own her, and those who did often regretted it. Her reputation made it difficult to find sailors willing to crew her. She finally met her end in January 1885, when her then captain, a man named Gilman Parker, deliberately ran her aground on a reef off the coast of Haiti in an insurance fraud scheme. Parker was caught, tried, and though he escaped conviction on a technicality, he died in poverty just a few months later. The ship that had outlasted her entire crew, that had drifted alone across the Atlantic, was broken apart on a Haitian reef and left to rot. As for the families of those who vanished, James Winchester, who was the owner, spent years and a significant portion of his personal fortune trying to find out what exactly happened to Captain Briggs and his family. He never got that answer. Briggs' young daughter, Sophia, who was aboard that ship at 2 years old, was never found. She would be almost 155 years old today if she had survived. Here is what we know for certain. On November 5th, 1872, 10 people boarded the Mary Celeste in New York Harbor: a captain, his wife, their infant daughter, and 7 experienced sailors. 30 days later, the ship was found drifting and empty. No bodies, no clear explanation, no trace. The most likely explanations being alcohol vapor, a precautionary abandonment, or a rope that snapped. It's coherent and plausible. It fits most of the evidence, and it is, in a way, heartbreaking, because it would mean 10 people died not from violence or disaster, but from a decision that probably seemed, in the moment, like the cautious and responsible one. But here's what stays with me: the breakfast on the table, the child's toys on the floor, the sewing machine oil, all left open. These aren't the details of a catastrophe, they're the details of a life interrupted, of people expected fully to come back, and they never did. The Mary Celeste has been called the greatest maritime mystery of all time. After 150 years, that title still stands. If you want to go deeper on the story, I'd recommend the book Ghost Ship by Brian Hicks. It's the most thorough account of the case I've found, and I'll link it below. If you found this video interesting, and if maritime history and mystery is something you want more of, subscribe. There are a lot of more stories like this one, most of them you've never heard. I'll see you in the next one.